Aileen Wuornos was one of the most infamous female serial killers in history, known for her cold-blooded murders of 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. In this video, we will explore the tragic life of Aileen Wuornos and the events that led her down a path of violence and murder. Aileen Carl Wuornos' life began on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan, with her parents Leo Dale Pittman and Diane Wuornos being teenagers at the time. Unfortunately, Aileen's father had a criminal past as a child molester and ultimately ended up taking his own life while incarcerated. Aileen's mother abandoned her and her brother, leaving them to be raised by their grandparents. It was a difficult start to life for Aileen, but it's important to recognize the impact that early experiences can have on a person's path. Aileen's childhood was a tragic one, characterized by lack of love, support, and guidance. At the tender age of 12, she was already struggling with the aftermath of sexual abuse and trauma. She began to act out, engaging in risky behavior, and even experimenting with violence herself. Despite her struggles, Aileen remained a young girl in need of compassion and care. At the age of 14, Aileen was sent to a home for unwed mothers, where she gave birth to a baby boy who was immediately put for adoption. It is believed that Aileen started working as a prostitute in her late teens or early 20s, shortly after she dropped out of school and left home. She turned to sex work as a means of supporting herself and getting by. As she struggled with homelessness and poverty, Aileen's life as a prostitute ultimately led her to meeting many of her victims, who were often men she had solicited for sex. Aileen Wuornos was married to Louis Grotzfeld, a wealthy yacht club president, in 1976, when she was just 20 years old. However, the marriage was short-lived and they divorced 9 weeks later. She was later arrested for several other crimes, including theft and assault. Over the next few years, Aileen had a series of run-ins with the law, including arrests for disorderly conduct, assault, and grand theft auto. She also struggled with drug and alcohol addiction and spent time in and out of jail. In 1986, Aileen Wuornos met Tyrell Moore, also known as Tyra Pittman, at a gay bar in Daytona Beach, Florida. The two men fell in love and she decided to move in together with them. Aileen was working as a prostitute at the time and would often bring Tyra along to truck stops and motels where they would offer sexual services to earn money. Despite their unconventional lifestyle, their love for each other was genuine and they remained together for several years. Aileen Wuornos' relationship with Tyra Moore, which began in Florida gay bar, would lead to a deadly spree of murders. Eventually, Aileen began to rob and kill her clients. Tyra was initially unaware of Aileen's crimes, but she began suspicious when Aileen would come home with money and belongings that she couldn't explain. Aileen eventually confessed to Tyra that she'd killed several men, claiming that it was in self-defense after they tried to rape her or assault her. Despite this, Tyra continued to stay with Aileen. The two women became inseparable, with Tyra acting as Aileen's accomplice and partner in crime. Tyra Moore knew that Aileen Wuornos was killing people. Aileen had confided in her about the murders and even involved her in some of the crimes. Tyra had helped Aileen dispose of the murder weapons and even clean up the crime scenes. However, Tyra did not report Aileen to the authorities until much later, after Aileen had already been arrested. When she did eventually report Aileen's crimes, she agreed to cooperate with the police and testify against Aileen in court in exchange for immunity from prosecution. However, their relationship became strained as Aileen's mental health deteriorated and she became increasingly paranoid and aggressive. Tyra eventually left Aileen and reported her to the police, leading to Aileen's arrest and eventual conviction for multiple murders. Tyra later testified against Aileen in court and was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation. The relationship between the two is often portrayed in media and popular culture, with the 2003 film Monster depicting their relationship and crimes. While the details of the relationship and Tyra's involvement in the crimes are disputed, it remains a significant part of Aileen Wuornos' story as the first female serial killer in American history. Aileen's modus operandi involved luring men into secluded areas, where she would then rob them and kill them. She often used a .22 caliber pistol to shoot her victims multiple times, then take their belongings and dispose of their bodies in the woods or other remote locations. After years of evading capture, Aileen's crimes finally caught up with her. In 1991, she was arrested for a separate incident, and it wasn't long before authorities connected her to the murders. During the questioning, Aileen admitted to the killings and maintained that she had acted in self-defense. Discover the gripping and controversial trial of Aileen Wuornos, a female serial killer who claimed to have acted in self-defense, but whose passive abuse and neglect came under scrutiny in the court of law. Aileen's trial was highly publicized and drew national attention, partially due to her status as a female serial killer. Her defense argued that she had been the victim of physical and sexual abuse throughout her life, which had led her to develop a deep-seated hatred for men. Aileen was officially arrested in 1991 after she was caught driving one of her victims' car. She was convicted of 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death. Throughout her trial, Aileen displayed a defiant attitude, claiming that she had killed in self-defense and that she was a victim of abuse and neglect throughout her life. During the trial, Aileen's defense team argued that she suffered from severe mental illness, including borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, which were exacerbated by her traumatic upbringing. They also claimed that her crimes were a result of experiences of sexual abuse and violence from men throughout her life. The prosecution, however, maintained that Aileen's actions were premeditated and purposeful, with a clear motive of financial gain, rather than self-defense. To substantiate their case, they introduced evidence of Aileen's previous criminal record, including charges of assault and armed robbery. Ultimately, the jury found Aileen guilty of all 6 murders, and she was sentenced to death. Aileen continued to maintain her innocence and claimed that she was the victim of a biased legal system that was designed to punish women. Despite appeals and pleas for clemency from her supporters, Aileen's execution was carried out on October 9th in 2002 at the Florida State Prison. Her story remains controversial and a tragic example of the intersection of mental illness, abuse, and violence. Aileen Wuornos' life and crimes serve as a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of abuse, neglect, and trauma. While her actions were undoubtedly heinous, her story also highlights the importance of addressing the root that causes violence and providing support, and how important resources to those who have experienced trauma and abuse can be. Aileen Wuornos' life was marked by significant hardships and trauma, including neglect, abuse, and psychological distress. These factors ultimately led her down a destructive path of drug addiction, prostitution, and murder. While her crimes cannot be condoned, it is important to acknowledge the underlying issue that may have contributed to her behavior. Aileen's story serves as a reminder of the critical need to address mental health concerns and provide support to those in need. It also underscores the responsibility that each individual bears for their actions and the importance of holding individuals accountable for the harm that they cause to others.